And this weaponization of food, as I call it, it's not just like this conspiracy. Literally, the cigarette industry, those two companies, Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds, were the two largest food producers in the United States. Like 50% of American food were created by cigarette companies in the 1990s.
Hello and welcome to the Doge and Maha News Channel. My name is Chris. In this video, we're going to focus on Make America Healthy Again, and we're going to react to a video of Calley and Calley Means on the Joe Rogan Show. They're going to talk about some really important dates in history regarding big food and how that impacts our food culture today. If you are interested in the Make America Healthy Again agenda, you're going to want to like and subscribe because I am bringing you new videos every single day with more and more information regarding Make America Healthy Again. I'm learning a lot about this, and if you want to learn as well, please make sure you like and subscribe and follow along. Let's go on this journey together. All right, let's check out the video.
But I think it's so important because nobody realizes this, is I think a lot of people listening to us years ago, it's just like, this sounds conspiratorial. And it's just like, what actually happened? And there's a couple like really important dates that happened that are historical that I think like set this structure really intentionally. The first was 1909, the Flexner Report. So literally John D. Rockefeller's personal lawyer wrote the report for Congress that basically set the standard that's the standard today for medical education. And it literally says in the binding guidelines that holistic health and nutrition and anything about interconnectedness of the body is pseudoscience. It says
Wow, it says all that is pseudoscience. Anything regarding nutrition and the biomechanics of the body is considered pseudoscience. That's really interesting. And first of all, this thing was put out in 1909? What?
We need to name the condition and cut it out or prescribe it.
And what year is this?
1909.
So
Name the condition, then you can cut it out or prescribe medicine for it. That's their methodology for curing illnesses. Name the condition, cut it out, or prescribe some kind of pharmaceutical. Nothing in there about nutrition.
they're still going by the recommendations of 1909.
We still follow the Flexner Report.
A policy. I mean, and we could get
crazy.
the policies, but like rescinding the Flexner Report and having updated scientific education and standard of care guidelines based on what we've learned since 1909 about the majesty of the interconnectedness of our body is a really good first start because.
Wow, and that's how all the medical schools are training all the up-and-coming doctors and nurses, and all their education is based off of this 1909 Flexner Report? That doesn't make any sense to me.
We're binded under a law, just demonstrably, just like, again, not conspiratorial. John D. Rockefeller's personal lawyer wrote this report. Why? Because John D. Rockefeller is the father of the pharmaceutical industry and created pharmaceuticals from byproducts of oil production.
Oh my goodness. John D. Rockefeller creates byproducts from the oil industry. He wants to figure out what to do with this. And so the pharma industry is kind of created out of that, maybe. And then the medical industry is trained to either do surgeries or prescribe pharmaceuticals. They're not trained to look at nutrition. Interesting.
And was the first investor into Johns Hopkins and other major medical schools, University of Chicago, and started the modern education program for health. There were some big issues in the health. This is the Wild West. But
wow, so all the money that started these big major hospitals and universities, a lot of that came from John D. Rockefeller as well.
He created Johns Hopkins and the standard of residency training as a way to silo diseases very intentionally and then prescribe his products and interventions as the top pharmaceutical maker. And the medical schools that he created were basically a distribution system to him. Okay, so.
Whoa, that's really interesting. Did you know that? I did not know that. Wow. And it's amazing to me that we're still following these same practices, these same guidelines. Over 15 years later, we're still following these same guidelines and same procedures. And no wonder all our doctors are basically trained to cut and prescribe.
So you get to World War II. Up until World War II, around that time, the 1950s, 1960s, I would argue almost any medical miracle you can think of or any listener can think of was created before that time. You know, it's all acute situations, emergency surgical procedures, sanitation procedures, antibiotics to make an infection not deadly. Almost every medical miracle we can think of was something that was going to kill you right away, infectious disease. And then you take the pill or take the treatment for a finite period of time and you stop it, or do the surgery quickly and you're cured. Those are medical miracles. And we had a lot of good things happen up until World War II. Very intentionally, the medical industry saw the birth control pill in the late 1950s, 1960s. And the birth control pill was the first pill in world history that people took for longer than a couple weeks.
Wow, I never thought of that before. So the birth control was the first pill that you basically would take for most of your life, right, as a woman. Prior to that, any pills you take would maybe be for like 10 days, maybe some antibiotics for 10 days and you're done. So it's kind of a short-term fix, which is what we want, right? Either a surgery or maybe here's a pill to get rid of that infection, but you only take it for 10 days. Everything was kind of short-term, and that's really how it should be. Just a quick fix and move on. You're healthy again. And here they are for the first time ever seeing the possibilities, potential profit of a pill that you would take for the rest of your life.
It was the first pill ever that is like, oh, interesting. You can actually convince someone to take a pill for years, for almost most of their life. Recurring revenue. And there was a huge emphasis of the medical industry to take the trust engendered up until 1960, RFK
Recurring revenue. Wow.
Talks about this. We didn't spend money on chronic disease management. All medicine was acute issues. Chronic disease, diabetes, obesity, that was outside the doctor's office.
Wow, that's really interesting. So they didn't treat chronic diseases or illnesses. Everything was focused on the acute, the short-term injury, the short-term sickness or ailment, and suddenly they see potential profits in treating long-term chronic illnesses. And I think what he said, and I heard RFK mention this before, that when his uncle was president, obviously JFK, when his uncle was president, $0 on chronic illnesses.
They saw that you could medicalize chronic conditions. Today, 90 to 95% of spending is on chronic conditions. So
90 to 95% of medical spending is on chronic conditions. Wow, what a flip, what a change.
What do? In the 1970s, literally the Sackler family, their grandkids did the opioids. Their forebears created Valium. And 30% of women in the United States in the 1970s were on Valium. Time Magazine, Valium Nation, Mommy's Little Helper.
Yeah.
So we started creating all these psychiatric conditions. We started medicalizing heart disease. We started medicalizing all these type 2 diabetes, started creating academic research.
Or how many people are on these long-term medications for maybe a heart disease or some other kind of chronic disease, and you're just fed all these pills. I mean, my parents and their generation, I mean, oftentimes they have these pill boxes, they have to open it up, and they're taking 10, 15, 20 pills every single day. It's crazy to me. I mean, Fortunately, I'm fairly healthy. I haven't experienced any kind of a chronic illness like that. And even if I did, I would be very suspicious about taking some kind of long-term medication like that. But man, it's so interesting how so many Americans are just taking these pills every single day.
Totally funded by the pharmaceutical industry, saying that type 2 diabetes isn't reversible, that it's basically genetic, heart disease, all these things, and started pilling them.
Yeah, so the pharmaceutical companies are saying, man, you can't reverse this. You need a pill for this. This is not something you can solve with nutrition. You can't solve this by changing your diet. Don't waste your time with that. Here's some pills.
Pilling them. Then what happened to food? Chronic disease wasn't that big of a deal in the 1970s, 1980s. You look at the graph of all chronic conditions, there's just a sharp turn in the 1980s. It's literally almost to the year of the Surgeon General report saying smoking wasn't great. So the second that report came out, Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds were two of the largest companies in the world. It wasn't like Microsoft and Google on the top companies list. It was like cigarette companies. Dopamine is a really good thing to sell. which the tech companies do now. And they use their cash piles. And by 1990, the 3 largest M&A deals in American history, in world history, were cigarette companies buying food companies. So you had Nabisco bought by R.J. Reynolds, you had Kraft and U.S. Food and you see those graphs of all the food companies owned by like a couple companies. That was the cigarette companies.
Wow. When was that? Like in the 80s? When there was a big push against smoking in the 1980s or late 70s, early 80s, they diversified and went into the food industries and started buying all of these big, massive food companies. That's really interesting. Now let's see what else he has to say.
And they did 2 things very, very intentionally. They took over the institutions of trust to say ultra-processed food was healthy, and then they took their scientists and rigged the food itself to make it more addictive, not to kill.
Whoa. Okay, so they took over the institutions of trust to say that ultra-processed foods were healthy. So the institutions of trust, so maybe like the FDA, the USDA and their food guidelines, they started to put money into those and influence those to say, hey, these ultra processed foods are healthy for you. You need to have so much cereal every single day, right? And these are foods that are going to make you feel better, going to make you healthy. These institutions of trust. Yeah, I mean, I grew up on the food pyramid. My mom would actually make sure that almost all of our meals hit the food pyramid. Man, and because we trusted that, right? We trusted that as good science. Hey, the government has our best health in mind. They're concerned for us. They're looking out for us. And that was all a lie.
Kill kids, but to make it more addictive. So you had that little food pyramid, which said ultra-processed food is great, low fat, carbs, base of the pyramid. That was constructed literally by the cigarette industry to promote their addictive products. And this weaponization of food, as I call it, it's not just like this conspiracy. Literally, the cigarette industry, those 2 companies, Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds, were the 2 largest food producers in the United States. Like 50% of American food were created by cigarette companies in the 1990s.
Wow, isn't that amazing? Where's your food coming from? Oh, a cigarette company. And they're using their chemists, the same chemists that made cigarettes addictive. They're using those same chemists to turn food addictive and make us want more and more and more of it. And instead of actually having natural food in our food, now it's all full of chemicals and addictive flavors and addictive dyes and all sorts of additives. It's not really even food anymore. It's just an amalgam of chemicals put together to be to represent food, to look like it's food, but it's actually not food.
And they have got us addicted and weaponized this food, and all chronic conditions have just shot up. It's because that ultra-processed foods, literally by tobacco industry scientists, hijacks our evolutionary biology. Again, you can't overeat grass-fed steak, but these food, with scientists much smarter than any of us, that's what they're doing. They're shutting off our satiety signals. The byproduct of this cheap addictive food, which we don't even have research for yet, is that it's sprayed with all these chemicals. It's sprayed with 10,000 chemicals that are allowed in the United States when only 400 are allowed in Europe. All these chemicals to make the food addictive, to make the food cheap, to do the monocropping. And that food is absolutely, and we don't need to wait for the research on this, these chemicals, these neurotoxins are destroying our cells, destroying our microbiome in ways we don't fully understand. So
that's a great point. I mean, we don't even understand this. They can't even do studies on it because there's so many different chemicals in there. It's not like you can just study one chemical at a time and take a look at how that's going to impact you. It's a soup of toxic chemicals that are just coming into our body, whether that's the chemicals that they use when they're actually making the food or the chemicals that they spray on the food when it's growing. It's just full of all these different chemicals and additives, and we don't know what one of those is doing individually, but all combined together, we still don't fully understand, of course, what that's doing to our bodies, and it's a big problem. We got to just get rid of it.
So I just want to make clear to everyone, this has happened very intentionally. And it can be undone pretty quickly too, but we have to realize this isn't a conspiracy. It's true corruption that happened deliberately.
Wow, wasn't that interesting? I especially found the part about the cigarette companies buying all the food companies super interesting. You know, the fact that they brought their chemists in that made the cigarettes really addictive, and now they turned those chemists into making our food very addictive, and also how to manufacture it cheaper, make the shelf life longer. You know, let's just keep on adding all these different chemicals into the food, and it's just really interesting how that kind of evolved, and it's become just second nature to us. We just accept the fact that all these chemicals in our food. We look at the back of a box, look at the ingredients, and see all the chemicals we can't even pronounce, and we kind of laugh it off. Oh, I can't pronounce it, ha ha ha, and then you just eat it, right? And it's so part of our culture, so ingrained into our culture that we don't even think that there's anything wrong with it. And the fact is, there is a lot wrong with it. We are being poisoned and we don't even realize it. So if you're really interested in this Make America Healthy Again agenda, you're going to want to like and subscribe to this channel, because every day I am bringing you new content regarding making America healthy again. And I am learning a lot. It's really interesting to me. I hope you find it interesting as well. So please like and subscribe. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you on the next video.